Okay then, JK, what was more surprising? Was it the Pumas or the Springboks performances?
Well, the Springboks performance did not surprise me at all. It was a kickathon. But yeah, look, I think both games brought different things. I thought the All Blacks were outstanding, especially at the breakdown, because, in fact, it was interesting to see Fozzie was a little bit grumpy after the game. I don't know why. I thought it was an outstanding performance. And then Australia, what a fairy tale. Quade Cooper, I just think that, we all had a bit of a laugh when he got selected. But, you talk to your kids about resilience. You talk to young professionals about hanging in there. I mean, he was a guy that had to go and play club in Queensland, and he stuck at it. He's worked on himself and on his game. And I just think, I remember Alfie Langer coming back from Northern England and playing in a state of origin, and it was a fairy tale story. He helped win that game, and I just thought it's a beautiful story. And hats off to Quade Cooper. And look, we spoke about this during our series against Australia, and the calmness he brought. Loloseo didn't take over the game under pressure, and he was Quade Cooper acting like he was just having a run around on a Sunday, really relaxed and not worrying about it. And I thought that calmness helped the Australians get up in the end. But I think from a spectacle point of view, All Blacks from A to Z just really nailed into that breakdown. Really expansive football. So I don't know whether it's lockdown, man, but I just loved it.
It was great, wasn't it? Certainly, it took a big chunk of the night, though, a double header. I mean, it certainly took some time. Both games went long. Mills, was this, I suppose, an important step forward for Beauden Barrett back in the black jersey?
I think so. I think it's just a continuation of him coming back into the environment. He's still a little bit tight and sore. I mean, you've got to realise, how big a step that is coming from Japan, and then getting yourself into the All Black environment, finding his feet, getting used to the intensity of the not just the trainings, but also the match. Getting up to that sort of mental state when you're preparing week in, week out. I think he's just starting to find his feet. He's got some good leaders around him in terms of Brody Retallick and guys, the young guys like Rico Ioane that are really stepping up. You got to remember also, we've got a chunk of experience that we've left at home, or had to leave at home, that still are going to join this side. So when you're looking from Beauden Barrett's point of view, he's just starting to get into the flow of things in terms of his game. But some of that stuff that try that he set up. That magical pass, I mean, that's just out and out class, isn't it? So it's nice to see those moments, but also him be able to tighten things up and talk to his forwards and run the cutter. And certainly, that needed to be done yesterday, against the Pumas, because it was starting to get a little bit scrappy, particularly in that first part of that first half.
Well, from one performer to another, if you think about the Wallabies, this is all about Quade Cooper and his performance, his ability to kick goals like I've never seen him kick before. But Ruby, does this put Dave Rennie in a little bit of a difficult situation? Because is Quade Cooper now an answer to the next Rugby World Cup?
Oh, absolutely. It puts everyone in a difficult position. I don't think anyone thought he would come out that calm and collected and just such a mature guy. And I have to mention, it's quite funny, he's trying to get residency in Australia and it got denied because they thought he lacked service to Australia. And last night, they gave the whole country more service than any number 10's given them in a very long time. So, it's such, JK mentioned it's a fairy tale. It's quite ironic. But just the growth, and he just kept his cool the whole time, not just on the field, but we've seen in every interview leading up to that match, the whole time he's been in the camp, he just said, I'm not here to be some Wallaby superstar. I'm here to grow. I'm here to learn and remember that I'm not just a rugby player. And I loved that message, because so many kids out there who get blown into the stratosphere in terms of superstardom, think of Caleb Clark, even Lolosea just getting thrust into there. And, Quado just showed, if you keep your cool, keep your humility, you can actually do some wicked, wicked stuff out there. And I remember when he used to play, he used to try, do everything himself, run through all the gaps and everything. But I loved how he was using everybody else, using them as weapons, inside balls, 12 and 13, you guys hit it up. He was listening to Hooper, so he just had this huge maturity and humility about him that I think, Australians coming up, number 10s coming up can look at and go, wow, that's all I got to do, just focus on me. It was just the epitome of that. I loved it.
He kicks 8 from 8. But in the reality, though, for me, JK, was this about Quade or a Springboks team which were disappointing, but they did enough like they'd done against the British and Irish Lions to get ahead on the scoreboard. They missed some kicks and they blew the last play of the game. They just need to win a scrum and kick the ball out. So as much about it's about Quade, is this about the Springboks just not getting it done?
Well, I was thinking about that last night, actually, and, they are a Northern Hemisphere team now, right? All their players play in the North. A few of them played Super, but their big guns are now playing North. And when you see them against the British Lions, it's like against like. So the thing that interests me, they've come down to the Southern Hemisphere where actually we will go to sleep if we kick the ball all night. We want to play footy. And all of a sudden, they've been exposed a wee bit. So will they adapt? Will they go, who cares, it won us the last World Cup, we're just going to carry on with the style? And do we have the ability to play that expansive game? Look, I think it was a Dave Rennie, Quade Cooper show. I think that the courage that, Dave showed to go back and say, look, I've got this wrong and I'm going to have to do something about it. And then, I think Ruby's right. Every young player that's coming through that might be trying to make it, Quade said, this is about balance in life. This is about things outside the game, family, doing other stuff, mind and body. And I think they're really, really important messages because he has spent a lot of time in the wilderness. And I think it reflected in his game. Why did he kick 8 from 8? Because he probably stayed out there and practiced it. Whereas in the past, he would have thought, my steps better. The razzle-dazzle part of the game is what I should be doing. And now what we saw was a really calm and collective leader of that Australian side that, the South African side should have won, but they didn't. And he had the calmness to just run them around the park from a director point of view. And so I think it's a contrast in styles, I thought they would just get incredibly outmuscled, but the Australian side stood up. They went hard at the ruck. They moved the big guys around. And when you move big guys around, they become less effective at the breakdown.
Yeah, they did early on in that game, though, JK, but the muscle did come in the second half. They got themselves in a position where they were scrumming for penalties. They were kicking for touch. Their line-out drive actually did enough to get them in front. So I look at it, Mills, is at a point where they've almost been dead. Yeah, I agree. Don't get me wrong, but it was enough to get them the lead. Have we almost dared the Springboks just to play that way, Mills? And now is it a hard one for them where they go, it's one of so many games, but we've just dropped the game. Given the nature of the way that they play, is it always going to be hard for them to build big leads because they're not playing expansive? And we can score 20-odd points in 5 minutes. That takes them 40 minutes to get 20 points.
I think that's going to be the big question they'll need to ask themselves when they're sitting and reviewing. They've certainly got the capability in terms of the players, out wide and the skill set. We've seen that in the Rugby World Cup. We've seen it in some of their players, but they go to their strength, and their strength is that. It's that game where they just grind it out, sort of trying to get some penalties. I mean, even when they're scrummaging, it's at the back of the number 8's feet. They don't want to let it go. They want to scrum. They want to get another penalty to then slow the game right down. Argentina, similar style, where they just slow the game right down. They come in, they meet up about a line up to then drive over and score. So the difference between that is, Australia and probably their fitness probably took a little bit of zap out. They muscled up. And so when they don't quite get that parity, or they don't quite get what they want in terms of the scrum penalties, then what do they go to? Well, they have to go to their kicking game. And if that doesn't actually work, well, you've almost sniped out their whole game plan because they can't adapt and go to anything else. And that's what the Wallabies did. Yeah, it was a scrappy game. Both sides made a lot of mistakes. But, in the end, perhaps the willingness of the Wallabies and also the expansive, play from them earlier on probably took some of that sting out of the Springboks' legs. To go back to Quade Cooper, I mean, this is huge. For him to be out in the wilderness playing club rugby, being the highest paid club rugby player, to then come back 2 or 3 years later and not make it about himself. It would have been so easy for him to come out and say, well, this is now my opportunity. It's been 2 years. I've been given all this sort of flack over the years. Now it's my turn. We've seen a guy that was absolutely mature in the role that he played. Forget about the fact that the game was scrappy and boring.